Hello, hi, welcome in and welcome back. I am Dustin. This is a podcast called Boy Meets Therapy. And typically in this show, I interview clinicians about different clinical topics. We've talked about things such as disordered eating. We've talked about parenting, even if you can believe it. I mean, I didn't talk about it, but the clinician did. We've talked about trauma. We've talked about all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of conversations, fun conversations that you can go and listen to. But what I think I want to do is I think I want to shift kind of the direction of where this little avenue is going. Because I think I found something that I'm really, really interested in. I've always been interested in it intrinsically, but also like clinically and in whatever other way. But I think what is going to happen in the foreseeable future and what I've put together for the foreseeable future is a bunch of different episodes related to issues that are specifically involving queer men. So when I say queer men, I am talking about gay men, bisexual men, anybody who falls under the umbrella of a not straight man. So I know some people don't like that term. I've gotten comments before that are like, I'm not a queer man, I'm a gay man, and whatever. And I get it. And sorry for doing that voice to imitate you, but I'm just using the umbrella term. So that's where this is going to be going for the foreseeable future. And there's some really cool things that are coming up that I'm really excited about. I have interviews that are coming out in the next couple of weeks with therapists that work with gay men on body image, that work with gay men with dating. I have a dating coach that's going to come on and talk about the issues that he sees when he's working with gay men, the ways that we sabotage ourselves, whatever. There are researchers that I have coming on, researchers and clinicians that talk about issues that relate directly to gay men. And so I'm really, really excited to kind of like move in this direction because when I first started, I really wanted this to be something that was general for everybody. But I found that I don't have to like appease everybody and that this is kind of like the avenue in which I wanted to go anyway. So in the future, and from this episode on, I'm marking this as like a season 2 beginning, whatever. That's what the focus is going to be. Queer men and issues related to queer men and all that fun stuff that we don't really talk about that much, but we're going to talk about it. Or I'm going to talk about it. And if you listen, that's great. If you don't want to listen, that's okay too. And I recognize that in the future, and I'll probably address this too, there are going to be some things that I say that you disagree with. And that's fine because there are things that I heard that I still disagree with and things that I heard and I initially disagreed with it. And then I eventually came around and was like, okay, wait, I see like how this applies, blah, blah, blah. Also, in psychology and in therapy and in mental health, no two people are the same. But there are typically similarities between a lot of people, particularly people that have similar experiences like queer men. So I want to just throw that out there and acknowledge that not everything is going to be your cup of tea. And I might say something that you don't like or that you don't agree with, and that's okay. And I might even say something that's fucking wrong, but I can take accountability for that. And I can say, hey, I said this. I don't think the data was accurate on that, whatever. But one of the things that I've done in order to avoid saying things that are just outwardly wrong is I try to incorporate clinical and empirical research into every conversation that I have. That includes even the stupid little social media posts that I post, commenting back at something someone said or, whatever, or making a statement or whatever. I always try to include some kind of empirical research that is peer reviewed and that is not just some random whatever thing. So a lot of the claims that I'm making are supported by evidence. So I'm not just talking out of my ass. And even some of the claims that are supported by evidence, I maybe don't agree with, but this is what like the data says. This is the best information that we have. So just if you're not familiar with that, this conversation, every conversation moving forward, I'm not just going to talk shit to you and just say like, well, I hate this and that's wrong because of that. No, there's going to be some kind of like support behind it. Of course, I have my personal opinions and feelings about things, and I'm probably going to include that as well because like my friends tell me, I don't know how to shut the fuck up. But I think that's kind of what's going to be the vibe going forward is we're talking about gay men, we're talking about bi men, we're talking about queer men. That's the vibe. So yeah, in the future, I have some researchers coming on. I have clinicians coming on. We're going to talk about disordered eating in gay men. And that is not always not eating enough food. So, well, you have to stay tuned for that. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about dating. I have a professor from NYU who's going to come on and share a little bit about his research. So I'm really excited for like the way that this is going and the conversations that hopefully can be started from this, because I know that a lot of queer men, we have these statements, right? We say things like, "Oh, I don't get along with X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z," or "Oh, dating is so bad because of X, Y, and Z." So, or just whatever else it can be, there's these standards in the gay world that are X, Y, and Z, and blah blah blah. So we're going to talk about the clinical research behind it, and we're going to talk to the professionals who actually treat these kinds of things. So with that said, I'm going to get a little bit into, that was right over 5 minutes. I wanted to keep it under 5 minutes. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is vulnerability, and I'm going to be a little vulnerable too. And so I want to talk about why it is so difficult for gay men to express vulnerability. Why is it so difficult for us to form and develop deep emotional connections with other gay men, with other men that we're dating, with anybody else in our lives? Why is it so difficult? And also, I think one thing that's really interesting is, why is it so easy for us to develop deeper emotional relationships with some people? And why is it so difficult to develop deeper emotional relationships with other people? That's an interesting question that I think we're going to go into as well. So I have prepared this whole like script that I'm going to try not to directly read because that's boring, but I have prepared this like conversation, and we're going to talk about why. We're going to talk about what we can do about it. We're going to talk about how it shows up. We're going to talk about ways that it's showing up that we don't think that it's showing up. And we're going to talk about things that are all the tea. I'm going to give you all the tea. The kettle is on. So I hope you're doing whatever you're doing and you're ready. So it's interesting too, because I want to throw like a couple of examples in there. So why is it that it is so easy for us to sometimes share a meme instead of saying, "Hey, I would really like to see you," or "I'm thinking about you"? And sometimes we share memes because they're fucking funny, okay? Some of the shit that my friends send me is, I can't even go into that because they send me some vile shit. And I bet you yours do too, some diabolical shit. I know that they do. So don't come over here trying to act like you're perfect and that blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Dustin, you're projecting. So yeah, why is it so much easier to send a meme than to say like, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. How is everything?" Why is it so much easier for us to send like a spicy text to someone instead of like, "Hey, I'd like to see you"? I think there's so many things that we do that kind of push vulnerability away. And sometimes we don't even recognize that we're doing them. One of the biggest ones that gays do is through humor. So I've noticed, especially with me, I do this a lot. And granted, maybe you don't think I'm very funny, and that's okay. I might not be that funny, but a lot of us do it. We use humor in order to kind of like blot the vulnerability that otherwise would be there. So yeah, and also I have, let me not call him out. I have a friend. I'm not going to call him out. I'm just going to say this. I have a friend who goes through some really serious shit. Okay. And then he will, say everything's fine, or he'll make a big joke and blah, blah, blah. And he'll be laughing. And I'll try to be serious with him. I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then he'll make some kind of joke. And I'm like, I'm not going to like fall for it. It's so hard to pull that vulnerability out of him because I think, well, actually, I'll tell you what, we're going to go into it in just a second. So what do I even mean when I say vulnerability, right? Like, vulnerability requires safety. And in order to be vulnerable with someone or to say something like, "Here's what I'm really feeling, and I trust that you won't punish me for it." I'm going to repeat that. So if I'm in a situation and I say, "This is what I feel about this," I'm going to trust that there's not going to be a reaction from you that is going to be negative to me, that would therefore hinder me from being vulnerable or being emotional or sharing something really sensitive with you from the future. So that's the specific example that I mean in general when I'm talking about vulnerability. For many of us growing up gay, emotional honesty was not safe. So if you shared a certain thing, or if you expressed something in a certain way, or using a certain terminology, you could kind of be shamed for it. So maybe you heard something like, "Man up," which is not exclusive to gay men, don't get me wrong. But I think it hits a little harder for gay men than it does straight men. So when you hear something like "man up," or "stop being dramatic," or stop crying like a girl. Maybe you were bullied for expressing affection, or maybe you were punished for being too sensitive, or maybe you were taught subtly or directly that needing others or expressing yourself to others makes you weak. So there's a psychologist that I want to mention. I mention this study all the time. Dr. Elon Meyer has a minority stress model. It's something he put together in 2003. And it generally explains that queer people carry an added layer of chronic stress from rejection, from concealment, and from internalized stigma. So over time, this stress erodes our capacity to trust. And this means especially emotionally. So essentially, like when your softness is punished, you learn to harden. And this looks very different for a lot of queer people in general, and a lot of straight people, cisgender, cis-hets as well. But for gay men, a lot of this, it looks like pushing away anything that might resemble anything that is similar to femininity, or anything that resembles showing some kind of emotion, or anything that says too much about what we're really thinking. So what is this like emotional armor that we put on? So how do gay men learn to protect themselves? So instead of being emotionally open, we adapt. So we build armor, and it can look like a couple of different things. So these are some examples that I put together. So there's the LOL, I'm dead friend. Okay. Everybody has this friend. Maybe it's not a gay man specifically, but anyway, everybody has this friend that is like, LOL, I'm so dead. Oh my God. So this friend tells you about being ghosted, and it turns into a bit. Or this friend tells you about their breakup, and it turns into like, oh, well, he was an idiot, or, whatever. Or this friend, maybe loses their job, and they turn it into like, oh, well, at least I don't have to see my every day, something like that. So everything that they do has incorporated some sense of humor into it. What they say is funny. Don't get me wrong. Like that friend is fucking funny. You know why they're funny? Because they're really good at being funny, because that's what they've had to do. But anyway, so it's funny, but it's also painful, and it never really goes deeper than the punchline. So if you have this friend, or if you do this, maybe even not all the time, but like if you do this generally, maybe it feels uncomfortable to go a little deeper. I would think about like, how often are you using humor or some kind of punchline to like kind of invalidate your own experience? But with that aside, like by trying to maybe take care of the person that you're sharing with, say like, no, I'm okay. Maybe because you don't want them to ask about you. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things there. But there is a clinical term for this. It's called emotional masking. So that is essentially when we use humor to cover emotional distress. It's common, and it's a socially acceptable defense mechanism. And that's there's like a research study behind that from 1992, but that's neither here nor there. But this is like a socially acceptable defense mechanism, right? It's a way for me to disarm people and to prevent people from really asking me what's going on. And that way I don't have to express that to them, because maybe that softness is a little too much for me to handle. So here's the other one. This diva, the booked and busy diva. So his Instagram is curated. Rooftop cocktails, fire selfies. Why did I write fire selfies? That is such an outdated term. Hot selfies. The boys at brunch. But his captions never hint at what's going on beneath the surface. So there's never any indication that something might be going on with him that is not perfect. And we see this all the time. Of course, this is not just queer men. I know that. Don't kill me in the comments or in a DM, but we're talking about queer men, so that's where we're going. And I have to say that because you can imagine, I've gotten several messages that are like, well, a lot of people do this. And I'm like, okay, girl, but we're not talking about a lot of people. We're talking about queer people. Queer people, honestly, they're the best. I I may cut that out. I might not cut that out. Anyway, so yeah, this is the curated, booked and busy person. This person, even when you message them to try to hang out with them, like sometimes they're busy or they always have something going on. This person is avoiding vulnerability. Not every time, but a lot of the time. So there is research from there is a publication called Cyber Psychology, Behavior and Social Networking from 2021. It shows that queer people are more likely to feel pressure to appear as thriving online, often at the expense of expressing real struggles. So we know this friend. Are you this friend? Are you this person? Think about it. Think about it. Are you this person? So the ghoster, let's talk about the ghoster. So he disconnects the second a conversation gets too vulnerable. I struggle with this for a really long time, even with friends. So silence becomes a stand-in for I'm scared to talk about this. So this aligns more so with an avoidant attachment style where like closeness feels threatening. And there are studies that show that gay men with histories of childhood rejection often develop emotional avoidance as protection. So this is definitely something that this is kind of a 2 + 2 = 4 situation in psychology, right? It's really simple. It's whenever I show vulnerability, there's a negative reaction to it. So therefore, I'm not going to show vulnerability. How do I do that? I pull away. I get quiet. I just don't talk about the things that are bad. I change the topic really quickly. Anyway, things like that. So then there's the independent one. And oh my God, did I even read through these? I wrote these and I'm like looking at this and I'm like, oh my God, I have traits of every single one of these. So the independent one prides himself on never needing help. He checks in on everyone else, but he never lets anyone see when he's falling apart. This is hyper independence. This is typically a trauma response. I mean, not always. Some people are just really independent, but this like level of like kind of problematic hyper independence is typically a trauma response that says, if I don't rely on you, you cannot hurt me. So this is something that I want you to like really think about too, is am I always caretaking? This is me. I struggle with this to a fault. I'm always caretaking. I will have a conversation and I will be talking about myself for 20 minutes and I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking about myself for too much. And my friends are like, it's okay, it's fine. And I'm like, no, no, no. What about you? And they're like, no, 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 back to you. So if you do this, I want you to just check in with that hyper independence. Can you accept help from other people? I don't know. I mean, sorry I got really quiet and awkward there for a minute, but just think about that. So, what does this cost us? Like, what does avoiding vulnerability cost us? There has to be some kind of consequence, or else why would we be talking about it, or why would we not do it, right? Because being vulnerable is a lot of times really uncomfortable. And so, what is avoiding this costing us? You might feel safe, but it comes at a cost. So there's a study in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, this is from 2017, that found that gay men report significantly higher levels of loneliness and emotional disconnection, even in socially active networks. So I'm just going to layman's terms put this in really simple terminology. So gay men, a lot of times, report that they have higher levels of feeling alone, of feeling disconnected from the people around them, even if they are consistently hanging out with people and they're always around people. Even if it's other gay men, even if they've been able to make friendships with other gay men, they still feel emotionally disconnected, even in situations where there's a lot of people around them that they know and blah, 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 blah. So you have you're the one with a full calendar and you still feel emotionally starved. Like you still feel like I'm missing some kind of connection here. So when that is happening, if that has happened to you, what I want you to consider, this is me to you. What I want you to consider is where vulnerability shows up for you in your life. And if you are doing any of the things that I mentioned before, or maybe something else that I didn't mention, that is potentially preventing you from being really deep and emotional with other people. Okay. So Brene Brown has a term for this. It's called commonality without connection. So this is when people are together, but we are not known. Okay. So this is something that I'm going to repeat because I think this happens a lot with queer men, especially queer men that have very active social networks. These are a lot of times the queer men that you see where it's them and like 10 other people and they look really, really happy. But this is, and this is not everyone. Okay. Don't come for me, gays, about, well, I take pictures with my gay friends and I really am happy. I know you are. Take what you need and leave the rest. So commonality without connection. This is when we are with a lot of people that are similar to us, but we still feel like I am not super connected to the people around me. I want you to consider that. And I want you to consider what your level of expressing, I know I said this already, what your level of vulnerability is, what you're comfortable with sharing with these people. Because vulnerability is what really makes you feel seen by someone. And you cannot see someone unless you can really feel the vulnerability and they express vulnerability to you, and you can accept that, because it's not just a one-way street, right? If I express vulnerability and it is shot down or it is deflected in some way, that is going to then alert to me that I cannot show vulnerability with this person. So same thing with someone else. If someone is expressing vulnerability with you, I want you to consider, how am I responding to them that tells them that it is okay for them to express what they've just expressed to me? That I'm a safe person to say that to? What does that look like? So just think about that. So this commonality without connection bleeds into our dating lives. If you think this is just for friends, you can think again. This... Okay, be serious, Dustin. This bleeds into our dating lives too. So many gay men experience intimacy avoidance. This is a term that describes a pattern where we crave closeness, but we sabotage it when it gets real. So there's a study in 2000 that found that internalized homophobia, which I do recognize this study is about 25 years old. So I do recognize that there could be some like differences in the way if this same study were conducted today. But nevertheless, this is the study that I found. So a 2000 study found that internalized homophobia is strongly linked to discomfort with emotional intimacy, especially in romantic relationships. So our good old friend internalized homophobia. I want you to think about how this shows up when it comes to vulnerability. We're going to go into that more in just a second, but because we need some examples, I can't just say that and then not give you an example. But anyway, so the masculinity trap. Masculinity does not leave us alone, okay? And we know that. Do we know that with masculinity and with the with the way that masculinity is treated in the gay community? Girl, I would say, well, no, I'm not going to say that because that claim isn't backed by anything. What I was going to say was, I feel like masculinity is even more prevalent in queer spaces, but I am not, but that, me saying that is just an opinion, okay? I don't have any data or something that supports that statement, because that opinion could be wrong. I don't know that that's true or whatever, but sometimes I feel that way. That's the way that I feel. But toxic masculinity and masculinity is everywhere. And it's not just straight people that are dealing with the repercussions of it, okay? Toxic masculinity infiltrates queer spaces. It infiltrates straight men. It is something that is really harmful to a lot of people. And I don't have a specific study, but I've read something about whatever. Google it. But toxic masculinity absolutely infiltrates the queer community. So when we feel like we're getting judged for being too emotional, too dramatic, too soft, we hear things like no drama, mask only, right? That's the classic one. Keep it chill. The one that I really hear a lot is no drama. The one that I really hear all the time from gay men is, I just don't want any drama. Which, okay, no, I get it. You don't want drama. What's your definition of drama? I want to ask you, like, when you say no drama, are you talking about, obviously I don't want any social issues. Like, I don't want to feel like, because there's different meanings of this, right? Like, I don't want to feel like my friends are going to talk about me behind my back. Like, I don't want to feel like, I'm making up names. Like, Joseph said X about Tony, and now Joseph and Tony are in a fight, and now I'm friends with Tony, all that stuff. I'm not really talking about that. When I say no drama, I'm talking about emotions. And if you think that this doesn't impact you or your queer circle or whoever, I want you to really think about it in general. When you say no drama, what are you talking about? Are you talking about listening to other people's issues? Are you talking about being present for someone who's having an issue with somebody else? Because if Joseph and I don't remember the other name, but are having an issue, when my friend comes to me and says, hey, Joseph said something that really bothered me, blah, 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 am I perceiving that as drama, or am I listening to my friend and showing up for my friend? Because that kind of stuff happens in every circle with people all the time. And when I say no drama, am I just saying, like, I don't want to deal with this by pushing, your issues or problems away, or something that you might open up to me about? Or am I really saying this person has a consistent pattern of having problems with everybody, and I can't hold space for this anymore? So I want you to think about those two differences. Anyway, the mask only thing. What the fuck does that mean? we need to have this conversation about mask only. Okay. This conversation has been had for so long. We've beaten it with a dead horse. Mask for mask. What the fuck does that mean? Okay. Like, who are we referring to? Whose definition of masculinity? What is masculinity? Blah, 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 blah. There's this whole other thing that comes up with that. When you say mask only, are you saying, I want you to act emotionally devoid? I want you to act like nothing bothers you. I want you to not share your emotions with me, kind of in the toxic masculinity vein? Or what do you mean by that? I want you to really think about what people mean by that and what you're interpreting it as, or blah, 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 blah. But this mask only shit, we got to cut that out, y'all. Okay. This is even from other gay men. This is especially from other gay men. So there's a study from 2005 that did research on hegemonic masculinity. If I pronounce that wrong, don't come for me. You can't pronounce it either. So hegemonic masculinity, that shows that emotional restriction is the social norm amongst men. And queer men often replicate those same norms in gay spaces, just with different packaging. It just looks different. And a lot of time it looks like mask for mask. A lot of time it looks like the person that we perceive to be masculine is the most quote unquote attractive person in the room. I want you to think about that. Okay. So I want to talk about vulnerability in the age of curation. So it's not just in person. Okay. This is obviously online. So we post our best angles. We post our happiest nights, our sexiest selves, but we rarely post, I feel invisible in my own friend group. I miss someone who never loved me back. I'm scared I'll always be alone. But when we do post vulnerability, we often follow it with a joke, an apology, or a reassurance that we are fine. Here's the thing. Curation is not connection. And pretending to be okay doesn't actually protect us. It is isolating us. Now, I want to give a huge disclaimer on this, okay? Am I saying that you should post an Instagram story that says, I feel invisible in my friend group? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is people don't post that. What you see is the picture, not what the internal feelings are. So I want you to kind of like be aware of this. I'm not telling you to go on social media and blast your friends or the people that you hang out with or come for them and say like, you know, blah, 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 my friend group, whatever. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is think about what people are not posting. Because we're all fucking human beings having a human experience. And like, anyway. Also, why would I post a picture of me crying on Instagram? I'm not going to do that. But when I have conversations with my friends, what does my vulnerability look like with them? Even though I'm not posting something that says, you know, I am really sad, do I connect with people in that way? And more importantly, do I understand that when I look at someone else's Instagram, they are a human being with a full range of emotions that I'm not experiencing when I look at it? Or am I just looking at it saying this person's got their shit together, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, yeah. So what we need to talk about, I just gave you a list of a bunch of problems, right? And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. And so, this is why I don't do episodes by myself. So how do we start showing up differently, right? I just gave you a bunch of shit. I just told you, oh my God, what about all these things that you're doing? Are you doing this thing? Are people doing that thing? Blah, 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 blah. How do you show up differently? What do we do about it? So if vulnerability feels uncomfortable for you, and what I want you to really do with this is me shaking you. What I really want you to do with this is to not just hear what I'm saying and think about other people and say, oh, I have a friend who does this, or I have a friend who does that, or whatever. I want you to really think about the way that you show up with people, because your connections, your friendships, your relationships, everything is being impacted by the way that you show up. And a lot of times we are showing up in ways that we are not aware of. A lot of times our behaviors are unconscious. We may push people away because X, Y, and Z, but we don't recognize that we're doing it. So I really want you to think about what you're doing. So how to start showing up differently. What does that look like? Start with micro vulnerability. Okay, I'm not telling you, if you're someone who who is one of you have one of the things that I talked about where, I don't know, let's make up an example of like, you're the person who always turns things into humor, because I do that. You don't have to start by showing up to your friend's house who is expecting you to come and make a joke about something and go full on, tears and, oh my God, I'm so upset, blah, 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 blah. You don't have to do that, because that's going to feel really weird and foreign to you. And that's going to be like, what are we doing here? It's not going to be like a natural like progression into what vulnerability feels like for you. So you don't have to trauma dump. You can start with simple things like, actually, I did have a rough week. Or can I talk to you about something that's been on my mind? Of course, you're going to want to incorporate some humor in there, because that's what we do. But think about something. How much humor are you incorporated? And every time that you're incorporating humor, what is underneath it? And whatever is underneath it, because something's there, girl, something's underneath it. What would it be so terrible if this person that you're talking to saw that? And if it would be, then you need to reconsider who you're talking to. Small truths build emotional safety over time. So start practicing things like, actually, I've had a really rough week. Or, I know me and Jason broke up, and I know Jason was like an idiot, but I actually am like really sad about it. What does that feel like for you? Can you even do that? If you can't do that, start with something lighter. Start with what I'm calling a micro vulnerability, not a microaggression, but a micro vulnerability. Build your emotional vocabulary. So in therapy, we have like a feelings wheel. You can Google it. There's a feelings wheel, and it has all these different feelings on it. And in my internship, we had like a feelings pillow that you could go on and pick however you're feeling. It sounds corny. I don't care. What's cornier? Using the diagram, the emotional vocabulary diagram, or having everything bottled up inside of you forever? Pretty bleak, huh? So that was intense. I'm sorry. So your emotional vocabulary, the words that we know are good, tired, I'm pissed, I'm mad, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Look up, pull up this wheel or whatever, or not even pull it up if you don't want to do that. Start thinking of other ways to describe the way that you feel. I worked a lot last week, and I was like, I'm tired. But I think what was really coming up for me was I was burnt out, and I felt overworked. So instead of saying I'm tired, if I call my friend and I'm like, if I'm practicing being vulnerable, right? And I say, actually, I've had like a difficult week. My friend says, what's going on? If I say I'm tired, that's one thing. But if I say like, I'm just like a little overworked and burnt out, that also communicates something a little deeper than just I'm tired. So just think about expanding the vocabulary there. If you want to journal it, journal it. I personally don't journal. People recognize journaling, or people not recognize, recommend journaling all the time. If journaling's helpful for you, definitely do that. Like, that's definitely a thing that people love. But I'm not saying whatever, but anyway, yeah, if you want to journal it, journal it. If you don't have the language to say it poorly. Okay, I'm going to say this again. If you do not have the emotional vocabulary to describe exactly how you're feeling, and you feel like you're going to say it in a poor way, say it in a poor way. Communicating something is better than not communicating anything. Okay? And maybe preface your friend and say, look, I'm going to say this poorly. This is not exactly how I feel, but I just need to get this out. And a lot of times your friend or whoever's listening to you can maybe piece it together, and you can come to a mutual understanding of what you mean. And that, my friend, is called being seen. Anyway, let people show up for you. That's another one. Y'all bitches need to let people show up for you, okay? So that was something that I really struggled with too. If I was going through a breakup, or if I had whatever going on and my friend was like, are you okay? Do you need to talk? I'm like, no, it's fine. You lied, Dustin. It wasn't fine. You're not talking about it. If you have a friend who says, you know what, let's get together and do something because I know that you've been really upset about this big test that's coming up. And you say, no, it's fine. I promise I'm fine. We could talk about something else. That's you avoiding vulnerability. And that's one of those things that a lot of times feels unconscious when you're like, no, it's fine. I don't want you to worry about me. Because your initial reaction is like, no, everything's okay. It's not okay. You are unconsciously pushing someone who is attempting to be vulnerable with you away. Think about that. So when a friend says, what can I do? Don't brush it off. Tell them. Let them help. That's what we want to do that. Let your friends help you. We build trust by using trust. So model it. I'm not talking about taking hot photos. I'm talking about if you're in a friend group or a relationship where emotional expression isn't normalized, be a fucking trendsetter and do it first. Vulnerability invites vulnerability. If you're in a group of people where all you do is joke all the time and you had this feeling where I really want to feel more emotionally connected to this group of people, you be the first. Don't get jaded. Don't get jaded. Miley Cyrus jaded. Don't get upset about like, well, why do I have to be the one that does it? Do it. Just do it. Somebody might be waiting for you to do it because they want to feel X, Y, and Z. Just do it. Whew. Okay. These are some of my closing thoughts. So you deserve to be seen. If you recognize yourself in any of these examples, you're not broken. You're not bad at feelings. You just learn to survive in a world that doesn't always give you the space to be soft. And I could have probably gone a lot deeper into this than I did, but God forbid I talk for like 45 minutes straight. Because I'm going to say something. I'm not feeling tired. I'm feeling, well, no, I feel fine, actually. That was a bad example. Yeah, it's not that I feel tired. I just don't want to, I just need a break from talking. So these are my closing thoughts. Yeah, you just probably learned to survive in a world that didn't always give you space to be soft. Here's the truth. This is where it gets corny. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to need people. You're allowed to want more than casual conversation and curated joy. You're allowed to not want to just go on a beach trip or whatever with your friends, but to actually have deep conversations. So, I have something. Should I bring that up? No, I have to. I had a friend that said to me one time, a really good friend of me, really good friend of mine, that said, I think that this friend is just expecting a little bit deeper from this friend than this friend is capable of giving them. And I was like, oh, what? And my response to that was, I don't know, that doesn't sound like friendship. And there's something a lot deeper there. But if you want to be friends with somebody, you should be able to express vulnerability with them. Granted, sure, you can't express vulnerability with everybody. But I think if you consider someone to be a really good friend of yours or you want a closer connection, that vulnerability has to be there. So here's the end all be all. Gay men deserve friendships where we can say I'm hurting and not be pushed away or joked off. We deserve relationships where we can say I love you and not feel embarrassed for saying that. Vulnerability isn't a weakness. It is intimacy. It is freedom. It is how we go from being surrounded by people to being seen by someone. That is my shtick. Okay. I hope that was helpful. I hope it was. We struggle a lot with vulnerability. And I know that I've struggled so much with being vulnerable with my friends. And I still do it to this day. I bring up a joke or whatever. But once I've started to become more conscious of the way that I'm showing up, I am starting to get better at it. And I'm also starting to communicate the message to my friends that I'm a safe person to talk about these things with. And so I think that is something that we as queer men can really be there for each other in that instance, because a lot of times we pit each other against each other. Is that the proper way to say that? We pit each other against ourselves. That's a more educated way of saying it. And it's some kind of competition thing. It doesn't have to be that way. And it shouldn't be that way. But a lot of times we make it that way. And I want to give you some empathy. This is not because gay men and queer men, whatever, are inherently bad people. It's because a lot of times we do not know how to express vulnerability in a way that is safe, in a way that has been accepted in the past, and in a way in which we feel really seen or we see somebody. In the words of Nicki Minaj, all I want is to love and be loved. To love and be loved. That's a song. Anyway, I will link the studies that I used in this episode on my blog post. If you're going to fact check me, that's fine. I'll link the studies so you can go through them and look at them yourself. But yeah, if you have any opinions or whatever on this, tell me. Reach out to me. Well, honestly, hold on. I need to get better about that because I have like message requests that a lot of times I don't see them. So I need to maybe work on that or something. I need to like create some way in which like an open line of communication can be there. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. But yeah, stay tuned in the future because I'm talking about a lot of really cool stuff on here. Tell your gay friends, whatever, or don't. That you don't have to tell them about this podcast because I honestly really enjoy just doing it. So, yeah, leave if you could rate it 5 stars, that would be great. I know that's so fucking corny, that whole like creator thing of like and subscribe, but obviously people say it for a reason. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for listening. It is later than I thought it was now. So I am going to drink some water and I'm going to probably watch some Netflix. So thanks for listening and bye.